3 years ago, the town of Hyde Park made its lunge for Hollywood's brass ring. But Don Johnson's Sweetheart's Dance melted away from theater marquees nearly as quickly as the snow cover that they had tried to film here back in 1987. The movie crew went home, and Hyde Park went back to being the shire town of Lamoille County, a role that it won back in 1835.
Good evening, I'm Marcellus Parsons, and this is the Channel 3 News for Wednesday, the 12th of December, 1990. It is our third night of bicentennial coverage in Vermont's newest county. This is the Lamoille County Courthouse, the second courthouse to be built on this site. The first, wooden structure with an attached jail, was built very quickly with local donations, and that convinced the legislature in 1836 that Hyde Park, not Morristown, should become the legal center of Vermont's newest county. This courthouse was built in 1911, again with plenty of private funding. That came after a disastrous fire that destroyed the jail, the original court, the church next door, and 18 houses along the main street here in Hyde Park. That fire of 1910 left 20 people homeless. This courthouse symbolizes Lamoille County's long tradition of exploiting political changes, adapting to calamity, and doing what needs to be done largely with their own money. Sharon Meyer is outside this courthouse, adapting to a cool December evening.
Well, it's not quite as hard to adapt to tonight as it was last night. Here in Hyde Park, the temperature is about 32 degrees, and temperatures have been running, about 10 to 15 degrees warmer than they were yesterday. Now, it's actually a pretty night here in Hyde Park. The Christmas tree lights are out along the street. We do have some warmer air that's pushing in from the southwest, and unfortunately, that means there's a chance of showers in the morning. Marcellus?
Thank you, Sharon. We will probably adapt to those showers in the morning, and Sharon Meyer will be back in this courthouse a little bit later in the broadcast to give us a more detailed forecast. Right now, though, let's go to Burlington and Will Michael with the story of a man whose political career began in a courthouse just like this one.
That's right, Marcellus. Funeral services were held today for Dean Davis. The former governor died Saturday after suffering complications from recent gallbladder surgery. Today, more than 600 people came to the Trinity United Methodist Church in Montpelier to pay their last respects. Alva Taylor has our report.
In Montpelier today, they said goodbye to Dean Davis, governor, lawyer, businessman, environmentalist, husband, and father.
We come together today to honor and to celebrate the life of Governor Dean C. Davis, who lived among us, touched our lives in so many ways, and leaves so many wonderful remembrances.
I'm proud to call him my friend. It was our privilege as a Moulton family to live next door to Dean and Marjorie during the second half of the 1960s. Those were the early days of both the Vietnam War and the drug scene. We had 2 teenage sons, and we were worried about the problems they were having with their peers. I would seek advice from my friend Dean and my mentor and buddy. You can't bury these things, Al, he used to tell me. You have to get them up on the table and give them some air. Talk about them. You can't solve problems by burying them. You can't solve problems by hiding them. What sound advice, whether it's a crisis around the kitchen table or around the United Nations.
I remember the last time I saw him, which was when the Montpelier Rotary Club celebrated his 90th birthday. And we had a lot of fun making speeches. He teased me, as he always did, saying my one problem was that I was a Democrat. And I replied that, in fact, Governor Davis, some of my best friends are Republicans. But I also asked him about how he felt leaving office at the end of his term, wanting to compare notes a little bit. And he smiled at me and he said, "Couldn't wait."
Later, an organist played the alma mater of Davis's hometown high school. More was said, but when it came right down to it, all his friends ended up saying they were better for having known Dean Davis, the ending Davis may have preferred most of all. Alva Taylor, Channel 3 News, Montpelier.
Back in Burlington, fire investigators say yesterday's early morning fire looks very suspicious. Today, city, state, and state police flew in a special dog from Connecticut to help them search for clues. Catherine Malley reports.
Fire investigators spent the day looking through debris, trying to find out what caused Tuesday's early morning fire, a fire that destroyed 7 buildings and left 22 people homeless. Today, investigators called the fire very suspicious, especially since it looked like it started outside.
There's only 2 types of fire. There's accidental and set. And if we can rule out all accidental causes, then it's a set fire. But we are starting to rule out accidental causes.
For the first time ever in state history, fire investigators had some canine help from a black lab named Maddie. She has been at more than 250 fires nationwide and has a 94% success rate at finding the cause of a fire.
If she comes across a point that she's interested in and resembles an accelerant odor to her, she will sit and repeatedly nose the spot. And as I mentioned, that's the point that the investigators will take that debris and forward it for analysis.
6 samples were collected today. Analysis will take several weeks. In the meantime, the investigation continues. Catherine Malley, Channel 3 News, Burlington.
3 young men will be charged with arson in connection with an October 30th fire in Burlington that destroyed a 6-unit condominium in Valade Park. The men will be arraigned tomorrow morning. Their names have not been released. New York State Police now have 3 men in custody after the robbery of an 85-year-old woman in Saranac Lake last week. The investigation has led to the recovery of thousands of dollars worth of items allegedly taken by 24-year-old Kenneth Hicks of Saranac Lake and 2 alleged accomplices, 20-year-old Robert Hicks and John Ulola. Police say the trio allegedly committed robberies from Vermont to California.
We know that many of the items were involved in a $130,000 robbery out in San Diego, California. So we know that we're in that ballpark anyway.
The 3 are in a Franklin County jail. Police say more charges are pending. Stay with us. We'll be bringing you much more news, including these stories on this Wednesday evening. Vermont's largest ski area is pushing for a long-term commitment, or there's no merger with Pico. And the medical center is one step closer to a new campus outside of Burlington. We'll have those stories and the rest of today's news, weather, and sports when we come back.
Merry Christmas!
Act 250 hearings on the Killington-Pico ski areas merger continue today, but this time it's now the state of Vermont acting as a challenger. Catherine Hughes has that story.
Killington and Pico's plans to merge have produced an Act 250 application to build 10 ski lifts and 350 acres of trails. Part of a deal being simultaneously worked out with environmentalists includes the donation of 4,000 acres of land for permanent wildlife protection. The ski areas say they need a 20-year construction permit to secure financing and because the project could take that long.
If we're having to give all our options up on our land, we've got to have some type of commitment that we can do some things on the remaining land. If we didn't have to give all the land up day one, it wouldn't be a big problem for us.
But the state's land use lawyer objects.
But just because we have the overall plan in front of us now doesn't mean we're any better positioned to know what impacts will be in 15 or 20 years.
Killington and Pico keep saying they are close to working things out with environmentalists, but resort officials say they also need a long-term construction permit to make their project work. Catherine Hughes, Channel 3 News in Rutland.
A new newsletter published in Washington says that the Air Force will announce in January that it plans to close the Plattsburgh Air Force Base or at least scale back operations there significantly. The base is the biggest employer in New York's North Country, but the report in the publication Inside the Air Force is being discounted by Congressman David Martin's office. They say there are no changes in the Air Force plans to replace FB-111 bombers with B-52s. People in Plattsburgh are looking at a 14.5% tax increase. That's despite city budget cuts and a dozen layoffs. Mayor Clyde Rabideau said today that in reality, the increase is even higher.
Technically, it's at 14.5% without much of a fund balance. In realistic terms, it's probably around the 20% mark.
Public hearing is expected to fill City Hall tomorrow night. The Medical Center Hospital of Vermont may soon be taking another step towards building a satellite campus. Today, the Vermont Health Policy Council decided not to contest the hospital's request to spend $500,000 to further study the plan. Last January, a Texas consultant advised the hospital that a 200-bed facility would be its best option for handling future growth. That plan also includes UVM's medical school and the University Health Center. Since then, a number of issues have been raised concerning the project, including its impact on health care costs and other hospitals in the region. MCHV officials plan to address those issues during further examination, and that is what they needed the $500,000 for. The Vermont Health Department and a few other organizations have party status until the 24th to contest the proposal, but officials now say it is unlikely that that will happen. Another action today, the Health Policy Council decided to recommend 136 new nursing home beds for next year. 261 had been requested. That goes on to the Certificate of Need hearing next month. An employee of IBM in Essex has earned a $150,000 award for an idea which saved the company both time and money. Linda Wheel of Essex Center suggested an idea that shortened time-consuming tests on semiconductor products, and that resulted in earlier shipments. Wheel holds the record for suggestion plan awards at the Essex plant this year. Landowners United is starting to gather support for its plan to repeal Act 200. That's the state's development control law. Last night, the group went to Morrisville and attracted another 100 people, where Brad Wright was too.
About 100 people turned out at the Charlemont to hear the message about tacking these posters on their land. Posters that threaten to deny sportsmen access to it. They hope that as the word spreads, it will force state government to ease restrictions on development, restrictions which devalue land in rural areas.
If you talk to Vermonters, they're real concerned because the rules and regulations on this land does devalue it, no matter what they say. And you know, the Constitution says you should be compensated. And there's been nothing, to my knowledge, to offer this compensation. The people that do hunt, the people that do snowmobile, the people that hike, you know, they're going to have to call their legislators, get behind us and say these people have a valid point, and I think from that standpoint it can be effective.
The battle over Act 200 has the potential to split Vermont down the middle, rural Vermont versus urban Vermont.
We're from rural Vermont, and rural Vermont is really being affected by these rules and regulations. Chittenden County has seen their development take place. They have a good tax base. Frankly, they're all set now. So I think we get the impression that they want to preserve the rest of Vermont for them. And I don't mean to single out Chittenden County in any respect, because we've seen that in other counties around the state.
Campbell said no meetings like this have been planned for Chittenden County, but some are planned for more rural counties.
Landowners United hopes to have 2 or 3 bills drafted for the next legislative session. They will be intended to either modify or repeal Act 200, but the opponents of this state's the development control law have lost this kind of battle before, so they're hoping that the poster strategy will produce a different result. Marcellus?
Thank you, Brad. That almost stubborn adherence to the concept of local control and property rights has been a hallmark of the history here in Lamoille County. It cropped up once before, when 2 of the original towns of this county had to be dissolved by the legislature. Those towns were Sterling and Mansfield.
But I don't think either one of them had 100 people. And they weren't really economically viable. If you know what the territory around Sterling looks like and around Mansfield, you really were kind of cliff-hanging if you lived there. I mean, you're sort of hung on the edge of mountains. And there's a very famous story they still tell in Montpelier, of course, about the last elected representative to the legislature from Mansfield, old Ivory Luce, who was elected by the people. But meanwhile, of course, the state had decided to cancel the town, so he chained himself to his desk in the legislature, and it took quite a lot of doing to get him out of there.
We will have more from Lamoille County as we continue our coverage of the First Republic, the 14th Star.
Republic 14th Star is brought to you tonight by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont, your friends and neighbors working hard to ensure that all Vermonters have access to health care coverage, and by Union Bank of Lamoille County, 100 years of interest and trust in our community.
This is Tim Lewis. Nestled in the rugged mountain country of north-central Vermont,
Lamoille County was a practical solution to a political problem when the Vermont State Senate was created in 1836.
And the Senate, of course, was the second house. And there were so many more towns on the east and the counties on the east that it was going to throw the whole balance out. Where you know, the mountain road, you can't do that. You've got to have a balance between the east and the west in Vermont. So the 14th county was created with a piece from Franklin, a piece from Chittenden, a piece from Washington. And it got 12 towns, of which only 10 now constitute Lamoille.
The new county needed a county seat.
There was a kind of let's say there was a competition for where it was going to be. The southern part of the county wanted Morristown to be the county shire, and this end wanted Hyde Park. And then it came to the point of who's going to put the buildings up. So the town of Hyde Park, they went into it pretty deep.
Hyde Park's privately funded wooden structure won the day. Then, on a springtime Sunday morning in 1910, the building and much of the town burned. Janet Daly was 9 years old and in church when the fire started in the jail.
And the minister had just finished his sermon, and we had gone to be in the Sunday school. When the sirens began to blow and the courthouse bell to ring, so we knew that it was locally, it was serious. And it started in the jailhouse where there were 2 inmates. And they had built up this blazing fire in the stove. Because, I suppose, of the wind, they must have thought they were cold or something. And it just got away from them. Everybody was pitching in and doing, it was really bedlam. I was lugging coffee and sandwiches. I came right home after Sunday school, and my mother made me change my dress and get busy. And I think it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon that the bell in the courthouse fell to the ground, and about the time the church bell fell. I think they were continually on duty. Of course, this is a volunteer, not only a volunteer fireman, but a volunteer everybody to do what you could. And they just were pretty dirty looking and pretty tired. Well, the next day they sort of pulled themselves together and went around and looked and see what the damage was and began to talk about rebuilding and of course cleaning up at that point was something different than cleaning up after fire today. They had, you know, the equipment, very, very poor equipment. This is 80 years ago.
Spearheading the rebuilding effort, local lawyer Roger Hulberd.
He became a committee of one, and he really fought for it, and he got it back where it belonged, where he wanted it. And the people of Hyde Park wanted it, actually, because they take great pride in it being a shire town.
This is the Lamoille County courtroom, and the presiding judge in this court at the moment is Judge Shereen Fisher. Thank you for allowing us to be here. Thank you for being with us, Judge.
Well, thank you.
Is there something special about a court that goes back 80 years?
I think so. I think it has a different feeling than the newer courts, and I think it's already become very much part of the community, which is important.
There's some disagreement between you and the side judges on the need for more space. You think it's adequate here now?
I think for the time being it is, and I think it's very important that all of the county's judicial business be in one place, and this is the place that people look to for justice.
You have practiced justice as a public defender, a private attorney, and as a judge in a number of different courtrooms. Is there a difference between practicing, say, in the newness of White River Junction and the antiquity of Lamoille County?
Well, I think the feeling and the atmosphere of this courthouse is very special. I think there's a lot of dignity and history, and that people feel that. And there's a sort of mutual respect that goes on between the people who work in the court and the people who come in and are our constituents. And I think that that's something that you develop over the years, and this building very much has that feeling to it.
Does it speed or slow the administration of justice?
I don't think it has any effect on the speed or slowness of justice, but I think it has a lot to do with people's perception of justice.
Interesting perception. Thank you, Judge Fisher, again, for letting us be here. There are 3 people on the bench here in the county court. One, Judge Fisher. The other one we have heard from already, Judge Charles Bailey. And the third is just Assistant Judge Shirley Locke. She, too, sits on this bench. She began working here as a court officer in 1973. She was elected a side judge, along with Judge Bailey, just 4 years ago.
I feel that Vermont is unique in keeping the assistant judges, and I feel if we're going to have a counterbalance in the judicial system, that it's time that where there is, even in the state, financial crunches, and we're always looking for extra Indians, so to speak, to get the work done to accommodate the needs of the people out there, that the assistant judges could be used in a lot more profitable manner, and I'd like to see that happen.
The courts are where we dispense justice. It's where we try and resolve disputes without fighting. Justice, though, costs money, and the judges who sit on the bench up there try very hard to save the public money. One of the ways to do that is to avoid having people come into the court in the first place. One of the ways to do that is to have a court diversion program. Their headquarters in Lamoille County is just across the street from this courthouse. Brian Joyce has a report.
407 College Street. The party's here. 407.
You are witnessing a crime in progress. Police claim this party is too loud, and that's a misdemeanor.
Date of birth? The 5th of May, 1970.
These students could carry lifelong criminal records if they are convicted. But if they have never been charged with a crime before, their case could go to the diversion program rather than to court. That means there would be no record of any arrest or conviction.
At the point of completing the diversion program, there's a dismissal. There's a formal dismissal of the charge in court, which means anybody who successfully completes diversion can truthfully say that they've never been convicted of a criminal offense in Vermont.
Guy Fournier runs the Lamoille County diversion program in this building, just down the street from the courthouse.
We see children as young as 12 who've committed their first offense who get referred to the program. And we see people in their retirement ages, in their late 60s and 70s and beyond. Right now we're seeing a large number of young adults charged for possession of malt beverage, college age, late high school age.
People in the diversion program escape a criminal record, but they do not escape punishment, community service.
Paying back the community is something that doesn't happen in the regular court process.
About 15% of all criminal charges will end up in the diversion program this year. Fournier says diversion eases the court load, speeds up justice, and gives everybody that merciful first and last chance.
To redeem yourself, to sort of make up for the transgression that you committed. So I think it's a real powerful lesson that people learn from that.
So far, records show that only 1 person in 20 who has gone through the diversion program has ever been charged with a second crime. Brian Joyce, Channel 3 News, Hyde Park.
Money is not just a problem for the courts, it's a problem for all of us in families, particularly around this holiday season when we're all trying to make ends meet. Sometimes that tension leads to violence and abuse. And when women here in Lamoille County face that kind of violence and abuse, they now do have a place to go.
Tucked away on an off-street in Morrisville is the Clarina Howard Nichols Center.
The real interesting part about our shelter is that it's not a secret shelter. Because it is a rural community, everybody knows where it is. I mean, the community knows that we're a real member of the community.
A member that each year provides service to several hundred women in Lamoille County. That high number may be surprising to some people. After all, this is a rural community, supposedly unaffected by big city problems. But it is not surprising to Sheila D'Amico. She is the director of this battered women's shelter, and after only 3 weeks here, she has learned a lot about the need for its existence.
Of the 4 shelters in Vermont, we are definitely the most rural, and there certainly is a need for it in every area. And in a rural community, you think, well, you can go to your neighbors and stuff, but we still need that. We still need the formal mechanism of a shelter.
That means a physical place for women to escape their abuser, but it also means a hotline service and advocacy with volunteers like Helen Gaffney.
Because I feel like I always had a happy marriage and a happy life, and I think it's time to pay back some dues.
That attitude fits with the spirit of this shelter's namesake, Clarina Howard Nichols, She was an advocate for women's rights in the 1800s.
Are you amazed that over 100 years later, you're still fighting some of these battles?
Yeah, I guess what I'm really amazed at in my readings of domestic violence, what I'm really amazed at is that it has gone on for so long. I mean, it's just been so entrenched. What I'm really amazed at is that we're still dealing with it. Yeah, I guess the answer is yes.
D'Amico hopes that answer will change in the next 100 years, so places like this will no longer be needed. Natalie Borak, Channel 3 News, Morrisville.
I made my first trip through here on a motorcycle in the summer of 1938. And I like the people. Especially I like the attitude of the people in the county. They're not, they're hard-working, industrious people. They're independent. They like to make their own decisions, and I feel I fit in that mold. That's the way I feel about it. I don't like to be dictated to by the state or the federal government any more than it has to have. And here, the people, they run their own ball game, and that's what I like.
No matter which of the 4 courts that you go into in this building, you usually find that money is the driving force behind a case here, whether it's a criminal or a civil case. Tim Lewis found that Lamoille County has been going through some startling changes recently as regards money, particularly the income that the people of Lamoille County earn. Those changes have been particularly obvious in paychecks and how those paychecks stack up against the statewide average.
The 80s saw Lamoille County income slip relative to the statewide average paycheck. In 1978, personal incomes in 6 towns were within 5% of the Vermont average. Folks in Wolcott, Belvedere, Morristown, Eden, Hyde Park, and Elmore earned between 95 cents and $1.05 for each dollar the statistical average Vermonter earned. 2 towns had a high income index. Stowe was the highest at $1.27. 2 Lamoille County towns were below average. Johnson at the bottom with 91 cents. 10 years later, a dramatic shift in Lamoille County's relative income standing in Vermont. Just 2 towns were still within a nickel of the state average, Elmore and the county's former top income town, Stowe. Only Cambridge stayed in the high income bracket, gaining a dime on its 1978 index to $1.20. 7 Lamoille County towns fell below 95 cents on the average dollar. Morristown and Wolcott were at the bottom with an 83-cent income index.
The history of this courthouse alone demonstrates that folks around here deal pretty successfully with the challenges of changing times. But to do just that, you have to be pretty resourceful, a Jack or Jill of all trades, so to speak. And we found a pair of those people last summer in Elmore.
Elmore's economy counts on summer folks for cash. With only 3 large dairy farms left in town, the lake is Elmore's economic anchor.
The population of Elmore in the wintertime is 550 people. And probably this time of year, we probably about double. Through the store, we'll have anywhere from 600 to 700 people through a day. Our campers are the big thing. You know, the state park. Had a lot of Canadians this year. It's been kind of nice to see some different people, some different places.
Over at the state park, Kathy's husband, Warren, rents watercraft and feeds visitors. He's also a real estate agent.
This side of the mountain, we're still in pretty good shape. Snow hasn't flooded over the mountain. It's a mile high, so maybe people won't, or a mile over, so maybe people won't flood over. But
the other side of
the mountain has become stall.
That's good, bad?
I don't like it, but I don't live over there.
Well, we see a lot of development and a lot of building. I think our biggest concern, my husband's chairman of the school board across the road. We have a 1-room schoolhouse, one of very few that are left. And the school system's really important. We want to see that kept open and just see the town stay small and community-orientated, even though we're getting more and more houses all the time.
Elmore, the beauty spot in beautiful summer. In just a moment, Sharon Meyer will be back to give us a more seasonal forecast.
You
if hunting and fishing become a thing of the past, this will be the last, maybe Canaan and Eden will be the last two places that it disappears from. The pickup trucks with the guns in the back window and the outlaw guns, and only outlaws will have guns, bumper stickers, are the predominant bumper stickers here.
We just showed you pictures of Elmore in the summertime. The weather's been changing so fast around here, it's almost like change from summer to winter.
Seasons almost. It's been getting certainly a lot warmer today. It is going to be getting, there is a chance for some showers tomorrow. Actually, the weather changes quite a bit from county to county. We'll take a look at a map of Lamoille County. It will give us a better idea of how things are and why things are different. Now, as people from this area will be quick to tell you, they tend to get more snow here than in some other parts of the state as the storm systems climb up and down the mountains and valleys of this county. It also tends to be rather chilly, particularly in the smaller river valleys of the county. During the times when there is not any particularly strong wind flows across the state, there is still something known as drainage wind, which brings cold air down from the mountains. The colder air is heavier. It tumbles down the mountainsides into the valleys, replacing the warmer air there, and particularly at night, the temperatures can get quite cold here. As we mentioned earlier, there is a little precipitation on the horizon for tomorrow. If we check back at the precipitation for the month to date, we are actually running a bit behind normal for the month of December by almost 1/4 of an inch, but for the year to date, we are still well above normal by 7.05 inches. Now, as far as heating degree day units are concerned, the average temperature was 20 degrees. That is 4 degrees colder than normal. It gave us 45 heating degree day units, the monthly total now 364. The month and the season so far has been milder. We used 14% fewer heating degree day units for the month of December. On top of Mount Mansfield, the high temperature there today, 27 degrees, the low 4. Present temperature is 17. They've had just a trace of snow in the past 24 hours, and there's now 22 inches of snow at the Stake. Over in Saudi Arabia, a warm day again. The afternoon high in Tehran was 82. In Riyadh, also 82. Now, around the northeast, we have seen some warm air that's been pouring in from the southwest. Now, as we take a look at the northeast temperature map now, we find the cool spots still up in Canada and over in Caribou, 18 degrees in Caribou. But looking to the west in Buffalo, 51 degrees, the warm front has moved through that area. Checking the local temperatures, 24 degrees, the cold spot in Newport and in St. Johnsbury, 40 degrees, the warm spot in Rutland, most of the rest of us in the mid-20s to low 30s. The low last night in the Burlington area was 15 degrees. That's compared to an average of 16. And a record low of 13 below zero was set in 1977. Our high today, 33 degrees, just 3 degrees above the average. And a record high of 59 was set in 1899. Currently in Burlington, under mostly cloudy skies, the temperature 30 degrees, the humidity 56%, the barometer 30.02 inches and falling. Winds are from the east now at 8 miles per hour, and sunrise tomorrow morning will be at 7:20 and sunset at 4:13.
Dry cleaner.
As you may have noticed, it is warmer than yesterday. If we put the clouds in motion for the past 24 hours, we can see some of that warm air that's been pushing up towards southern New England. There are some showers in central New Hampshire and Maine, some flurries just over the border in Canada, but there is more activity out west. As we get back down to the radar map, the national radar map, we find that there is a storm system out there. They are expecting several inches of snow out in Colorado and some rain in Arizona. Now, on the current surface map, the storm system over the Great Lakes is heading up to the northwest of us. That means the mild air will be with us through tomorrow morning. Now, tomorrow, there will be a few morning showers around. However, we expect that trailing cold front is going to be moving through near noontime. Then the temperatures are going to be dropping once again through the afternoon. So the forecast then for tonight, it will be partly cloudy and milder than last night. The low temperature is 25 to 35. And on Thursday, a chance of morning showers, then turning windy and colder in the afternoon. High temperatures 40 to 45, then dropping during the afternoon. And for Thursday night, partly cloudy with a chance of flurries. The lows 15 to 20. For Friday, partly sunny and cold, high temperatures only in the 20s, and the extended outlook for the weekend. Partly sunny on Saturday, still chilly. On Sunday, a chance of snow, sleet, or freezing rain. Temperatures in the 30s, and on Monday, rain or freezing rain is possible too. High temperatures again in the 30s. Up next is sports with JJ and more bicentennial coverage.
I would like to see that that we retain as much as we can of a rural atmosphere. I don't think that we can stop development, but I think that we can somehow look at development to enhance the state. I like to see the green pastures and the cows and that kind of thing, and I'd hate to see that be lost.
Well, the Boston Celtics take a 2-game Atlantic Division lead into their game tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks. One thing the Celtics have to be thankful for right away, this game is being played at Boston Garden. The Bucks have been a terror at home, off to an 11-0 start after beating the Chicago Bulls last night. The Bucks are 15-6 overall and lead the Central Division by 1 game. The 16-4 Celtics are 2 up on the Sixers in the Atlantic Division. The Dartmouth basketball team went into last night's game with a 1-1 record. After an opening game loss to Richmond in the Richmond tourney, the Big Green followed that up with a consolation victory over Wichita State. Last night they were back in action, playing the University of Hartford in Hartford, Connecticut. The Big Green got off to a good start. There were a lot of strange happenings in the Boston Providence College basketball game last night. First of all, Providence was missing 3 suspended players because of a fight in a weekend game. As if that's not strange enough, an additional 57 seconds was put on the clock during a clock malfunction early in the second half, and it went unnoticed. Battle of 2 teams with opposite situations last night in South Burlington in high school basketball. The Rutland Red Raiders returned 4 of 5 starters from last season. The South Burlington Rebels lost all 5 starters, but on the court it was an even battle for a while. South Burlington coach Dave LaPointe was enjoying a strong performance from his squad, a 2-point Rutland lead at the break. Rebels hung tough, Phil Joyal with the steal and score. But the Raiders went on a tear to end the third quarter. TJ Sabatka with a strong dribble and layup. An 8-0 run for Rutland. They continued it into the fourth. Sabatka with a pretty pass to Jason Casarino for the chippy. South Burlington tried to hang in. Kim Hustles drains the 3-pointer, but it's not enough. Rutland pulled away down the stretch. Justin Anderson with a long pass to Justin Mock. The Raiders just too much in the second half, and they go home with a 75-58 win.
Our defense was pretty bad the first half, and we weren't getting the good shots the first half. And then when we came out in the second half, we started putting pressure on the ball and worked for the good shots, and we came out with some big plays on defense and offense.
Coming up here to South Burlington, we've always had a real tough time up here with Dave teams, and we're pleased to get out of here with a win.
We saw a lot of real positive things happening out there. We had a lot of people that went in and contributed. I think one of the things that we're going to have to do is continue to get better defensively. We played hard, but sometimes we weren't in the right places.
Let's move on to the ladies. Each year, Essex Junction and South Burlington girls basketball programs are among the best in the state. Last night, an early Christmas present for hoop fans as the 2 teams went head-to-head. The Hornet defense did the job early. Sarah Schreiber with the block to Carrie Lapine. Lapine lays it in. Essex was in business. They took a 14-point lead after 1. Kathy Ardell helped out with a short jumper. The Hornets were cold in the second as South Burlington took advantage. Katie O'Brien with the J, 24-20 at the half. In the second, the Rebels tied, then went to a stall, but Carrie Lapine saved the day for Essex. Shots like that one and her steal late in the game iced it for the Hornets. 36-30 was the final score in that one. One college note, senior forward Tony Camp of Green Mountain College was voted NAIA District 5 Player of the Week. He scored 59 points in 2 games against Norwich University in the Cadet Classic. That included 39 in the championship game. When we return, the New York Rangers with one of the wildest goals you'll ever see.
Right through, the people in Lamoille County are very nice people, and they're very caring. Even the Flatlanders, they move up. They're nice people. They come up here to get away from the rat race down there in the city.
Well, the Boston Bruins are in action tonight, and they're going to have a real tough time of it. The Bruins go into tonight's game against the Hartford Whalers, leading the Adams Division by just 1 point. The Montreal Canadiens could take over first place in the Adams Division tonight. I said if they win their game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and if the Whalers beat the Bruins, it's been another rough year for Toronto. They're buried in the North Division cellar with a 7-24-1 record. Last night in the NHL, the New York Rangers on the West Coast They took on the LA Kings. You might remember a couple weeks ago in the Vermont-Dartmouth game, the Cats scored a strange goal from their own blue line, and we said you'll never see anything like that again. Well, here's one that's in the same neighborhood. Well, the New England Patriots had more problems today. They have now lost their defensive coordinator. Charlie Sumner has called it quits immediately. His job will be picked up by the rest of the coaching staff. California Angels have signed a free agent pitcher, left-hander Floyd Bannister, who signed a one-year deal. He spent last season in Japan, where he went 3-2. And the Texas Rangers announced that Goose Gossage will be given a spring training workout. That is going to do it in sports for tonight. Momentarily, we'll be returning to Lamoille County for more of tonight's bicentennial. Good night.
In the community I live in, and in this community, I sense that there's a lot of helping out, a lot of sharing, and continuation of traditions, but expansion into new ideas. I don't think Vermonters are afraid of new ideas.
First Republic 14th Star has been brought to you by Union Bank of Lamoille County, 100 years of interest and trust in our community, and by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Vermont, your friends and neighbors working hard to ensure that all Vermonters have access to health care coverage.
There are a number of interesting people who live here in Lamoille County. They come from all walks of life. One of the best-known residents of Elmore probably sums up the credo of this county with a line from one of his songs, "Gonna die with a smile if it kills me." Brad right now with a portrait of a troubadour, John Galemore, a self-proclaimed Elmoron.
My mind may seem a little off, deviating from a normal pattern. My behavior may be vaguely reminiscent of a soul from Saturn. This reality is so unnerving, but the melody is the antidote for the malady. Somebody gonna change my name to Dada.
It's this kind of music that has endeared John Galemore to thousands of Vermonters. Lyrics that entertain and yet reflect the moods of ordinary people.
Growing with the child inside my lady. Do I wear a pipe? Smoke a cardigan sweater.
Galemore is a Flatlander from New Jersey. Once part of a commercially successful duo traveling all over the Northeast, he grew disenchanted with big-time recording, and so he left it. There was something about Vermont that drew him back, and it lives undefined in his music.
Much of what Vermont means to me defies the language, and that's fine. I don't mind that. So I've only written about Vermont a few times because I'd rather not write about it and just let it affect me and think about it and let it inspire me than to write a song that doesn't measure up to Vermont.
Galemore thinks of his music as being inspired by Vermont, but seldom does he write songs specifically about it. Being a Flatlander may have helped Galemore figure out what it really takes to live in Vermont, and Lamoille County in particular.
Well, it makes for a person who has to commit themselves to living in a place. I mean, if you're willing to put up with Vermont's weather and Vermont's financial disparities, then you really must want to be here. And people are committed to Vermont who live here, and that makes for a pretty good environment, pretty positive place. You have to love it.
And so Galemore's earthier, more down-home understanding of Vermont is reflected in his music.
'Tis the season to be dirty, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. All around me folks are moping, fa-la-la-la-la-la-la. Earth forever I am hoping, fa-la-la, slinging dirt. I can rock and roll around in dirt. Mud pie a la mode.
That wraps up our Wednesday broadcast here in Lamoille County. We want to thank the side judges here in Hyde Park, Shirley Locke and Charles Bailey, for being our hosts this evening and allowing us to use this magnificent courthouse for our broadcast. Tomorrow night, we will move downriver, down the Lamoille River, and then up the hill to Johnson State College. We hope you will join us as our bicentennial coverage continues. From all of us here on the road and back in Burlington, thanks for watching. I'm Marcellus Parsons. Good night.